Somebody call animal control!
Staff Sergeant Brutus Kane's laughter echoed across Fort Carson's shooting range. Looks like a three-legged dog wandered onto base. 20 Rangers erupted in cruel amusement as the small woman limped past, her aluminum crutch dragging slightly on the worn concrete. She wore civilian clothes, gray t-shirt hanging loose on her thin frame, dark pants, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun like she was trying to disappear into the background. Seriously though, Corporal Ashton Rivers smirked, pulling out his phone and hitting record. How did security let this charity case through the gate? What's next? Wheelchair basketball on the firing line? Specialist Decker Walsh high-fived him, grinning at the camera. $10 says she's some officer's pity hire. Diversity quota for the disabled. The woman's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her grip on the crutch, her right leg clearly damaged beneath the medical bracing visible through her pants. Weakness, vulnerability, everything these elite soldiers had been trained to exploit and eliminate. "Hey, broken bird," Kane called louder, his voice carrying across the entire complex. "Wrong turn at the hospital? Military zones are for people who can actually fight." Still no response. She just kept moving forward, blue eyes focused straight ahead, ignoring the growing crowd of soldiers gathering to watch what had become their morning entertainment. But then came the radio transmission bleeding through the range's communications system. Foreign voices, urgent Arabic cutting through the static. "Malak al-Maut Tadamasha, the angel of death walks among them." And for the first time since entering the range, the woman's trembling completely stopped. Her grip on the crutch shifted. Her posture changed almost imperceptibly. 20 seconds later, the first enemy sniper fired from the tree line 800 yards away. The bullet shattered concrete just 3 feet from where Colonel Hayes stood, reviewing morning training reports. Chips of debris scattered across his uniform as he dove for cover behind a concrete barrier. "Contact! Everyone down!" Kane bellowed, his voice cutting through the sudden chaos. Rangers dropped to prone positions, weapons ready, scanning for threats. But the woman didn't drop. She remained standing, crutch planted firmly, head turning with mechanical precision as she scanned the tree line. Not the panicked darting of a frightened civilian, but the methodical sweep of someone trained in threat assessment. "Lady, get down!" Rivers shouted from behind his cover, phone still recording. "There's a sniper out there!" She ignored him completely. Instead, she limped quickly toward the maintenance shed, moving with purpose despite her obvious disability. Her right leg dragged, but her upper body moved with efficiency that seemed oddly practiced. Dr. Elena Cross watched from the psychology building's second-floor window, notepad in hand. She'd been observing the morning's cruel display with professional disgust, but this woman's reaction to gunfire was unusual. Most civilians would be screaming, running, or frozen in terror. This one was conducting tactical reconnaissance. Inside the maintenance shed, Sage Blackwood, according to her employee badge, retrieved a toolbox with hands that had stopped their earlier trembling entirely. The shake that had been so pronounced when handling a simple coffee cup was completely absent when her fingers closed around precision instruments. A second radio transmission crackled through the air, clearer this time. "Angel target confirmed, maintain overwatch. Repeat, angel target confirmed." Kane's head snapped up from his position. "Did anyone else hear that? They're talking about an angel. What the hell does that mean?" Rivers was still filming, narrating breathlessly to his phone camera. "Holy cow, this is insane. There's a sniper attack and this disabled woman is just walking around like it's nothing. This is going viral for sure." Specialist Walsh posted the initial clip online with the caption, "Disabled woman freezes during attack at Fort Carson. Some people just aren't built for military life." The video already had 50 likes and climbing. But Dr. Cross was making different notes. The woman's stress response was inverted, trembling hands during social interaction, steady hands under life-threatening pressure. Classic indicators of someone with extensive combat experience masquerading as a civilian. Sage emerged from the maintenance shed carrying what appeared to be standard repair equipment, but her movements suggested familiarity with the weight and balance of tactical gear. She approached the base's main communication array, which had been damaged in the initial attack. Kane watched her suspiciously. "Since when does maintenance respond to combat situations? Shouldn't you be hiding in a bunker somewhere?" For the first time, Sage spoke. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "Radio's down. Can't call for backup without comms." She knelt beside the damaged equipment, crutch propped against the concrete wall. Her hands moved over the radio components with disturbing precision. fingers finding connection points and damaged circuits with the confidence of someone who'd done this before, many times. 27.55 megahertz, she murmured, adjusting frequencies. Standard insurgent tactical frequency. The words hung in the air like a confession. Rivers lowered his phone, staring. How the hell does a maintenance worker know insurgent radio frequencies? Kane was on his feet now, moving closer. Ma'am, I need you to explain how you know that information. Sage's hands never paused in their work. Discovery Channel, she said simply, but her tone suggested she didn't expect anyone to believe it. The radio crackled to life, crystal clear now. More Arabic voices, urgent and coordinated. Target acquired, Angel remains in position, awaiting orders. Dr. Cross leaned forward against her window. The woman had just restored military communications during an active combat situation, using knowledge that no civilian should possess. Either she was the luckiest maintenance worker on Earth, or she was something else entirely. Private Jensen, barely 19, and on his first deployment, watched from his position near the ammunition storage. Unlike the others, he noticed details. The way she'd automatically moved to the communication array instead of seeking cover. The way she'd known exactly which components to check without examining the system first. The way she held her body despite the crutch, weight balanced, ready to move. His grandfather had been military. Private Jensen knew what operational readiness looked like. Colonel Hayes crawled over to Kane's position, staying low. Sergeant, who is that woman, and why is she exposing herself to sniper fire? Sage Blackwood, sir. Maintenance Division. Been here about 3 months. But, sir... Kane glanced back at the woman, who was now fine-tuning the radio with movements that suggested muscle memory. Something's not right about her. The radio suddenly burst with clear transmission. English this time. Military protocol. Fort Carson Base, this is Overwatch 7. We have hostile sniper confirmed in tree line, grid reference 3472. Request immediate tactical response. Everyone stared. The voice was Sage's, and she was speaking with the crisp authority of someone accustomed to giving orders under fire. Rivers filmed everything, his social media post gaining hundreds of comments. Guys, this is crazy. She just started talking like a soldier, like professional military talk. But his excitement faltered when he read the first few comments. Bro, that's not normal civilian behavior. My dad was special forces. She moves like military. Why does a disabled maintenance worker know tactical procedures? This story is about to get absolutely insane, and I mean that literally. If you want to see how a broken woman completely destroys everything these soldiers think they know about strength, smash that like button and subscribe right now. And if this story is giving you chills already, hit that thanks button to support more incredible military stories. I'm curious though, where are you watching this from? What country or state? Drop a comment and let me know. I love connecting with viewers from around the world who appreciate these hidden hero stories. Sage finished with the radio and struggled to her feet, crutch scraping against concrete. But as she rose, Kane noticed something that made his blood run cold, her stance. Despite the crutch, despite the obvious leg damage, her upper body maintained perfect tactical posture. Shoulders squared, head up, eyes constantly scanning. It was subtle, almost invisible, but unmistakable to anyone with military training. Ma'am, Kane said carefully, I need to ask you some questions. Sage looked at him with those startlingly blue eyes. Questions can wait. You have hostile contacts in tree line, approximately 800 meters, elevated position. I count at least 2, possibly 3 shooters based on the audio patterns. The specificity of her assessment sent chills through every ranger present. Colonel Hayes spoke up from his position. Miss Blackwood, how exactly do you know that? Pattern recognition, she replied, but her eyes were already moving to the next problem. A soldier had been grazed by debris from the initial shot and was bleeding from his forearm. Standard first aid protocol would be to wait for medics, but Sage was already moving toward him. Walsh, apply pressure to Private Morrison's arm, she instructed, then caught herself. She'd just given a tactical order using military nomenclature to address a subordinate she shouldn't have known the rank of. The slip hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Cross was writing furiously now, combat leadership emerging under stress, tactical knowledge, operational vocabulary. This woman wasn't maintenance personnel, she was military, probably special operations, possibly active. Kane keyed his radio. Base, this is Range 7. Need immediate background check on employee Sage Blackwood, Maintenance Division, Priority Alpha. While they waited for information, Sage had moved to the wounded soldier. She knelt beside him, crutch forgotten, and examined the wound with practiced efficiency. Superficial laceration, no arterial damage, she assessed, then began treating the wound with techniques that were definitely not Red Cross certified. "Where did you learn field medicine?" Dr. Cross called down from her window. Sage paused for a fraction of a second. "YouTube," she said, but her hands continued working with the precision of someone who'd treated combat wounds under fire. She cleaned the wound, applied pressure, and wrapped it using improvised materials with efficiency that would have impressed a combat medic. When she finished, the soldier's bleeding had stopped, and the bandage was professionally applied. Rivers was still filming, but his commentary had changed. "Okay, this is getting weird. This woman just treated a combat wound like she's done it 1,000 times. That's not normal maintenance worker behavior." Kane's radio crackled. "Range 7, this is base operations. We're showing Sage Blackwood employed as of January 15, 3 years ago. Prior employment history." "Sir, this is strange. Her file shows no prior work history before Fort Carson. It's like she didn't exist before 3 years ago." The timeline hit Kane like a physical blow. 3 years ago, right around the time several major special operations had gone dark in Syria. Operations where personnel were listed as killed in action, but bodies were never recovered. Sage overhead the transmission. Her expression didn't change, but Dr. Cross noticed her breathing pattern shift slightly. Stress response, but controlled, professional. "Ma'am," Kane said slowly, "I need you to explain your employment history." "Private contractor," Sage replied without hesitation. "Moved around a lot. This is my first stable position." But her explanation rang hollow. Private contractors left paper trails. They had references, previous employers, tax records. The absence of any history before Fort Carson suggested something much more significant than simple employment gaps. A third radio transmission cut through their speculation, this time in accented English. "Base station, Angel of Death confirmed in Sector 7. She appears to be operating under civilian cover. Recommend immediate engagement." The transmission ended in static, but its implications were staggering. Kane stared at Sage, who had gone perfectly still. Not the stillness of fear, but the predatory stillness of someone deciding whether to maintain cover or abandon it entirely. "Angel of Death," Kane repeated slowly. "That's what they called you." Sage's blue eyes met his. For a moment, her civilian mask slipped, and Kane saw something that made his combat-hardened soul shiver. Intelligence, calculation, and beneath that, a lethality that belonged in war zones, not maintenance sheds. "People say a lot of things," she said carefully, but Dr. Cross was connecting pieces. Angel of Death. The nickname had surfaced in intelligence reports from Syria and Afghanistan. A sniper, gender unknown, who had been responsible for destabilizing entire insurgent networks. Official records claim the Angel had been killed in action 3 years ago during Operation Sandstorm. 3 years ago. Exactly when Sage Blackwood's employment history began. Rivers was reading comments on his video, his face growing pale. Military personnel from around the world were weighing in, and their observations were terrifying. "That's Angel posture. I've seen it in Kandahar. Movement patterns match SEAL training. She's military, high-level military. Disabled my foot. That's operational cover." Colonel Hayes crawled closer to Kane's position. "Sergeant, run a facial recognition scan through DoD databases. Cross-reference with special operations personnel from the last 5 years." Kane nodded and initiated the scan using his tactical tablet. While they waited for results, the enemy sniper fired again, this time aiming for the communication array Sage had just repaired. The bullet missed its target by inches, but the message was clear. They wanted the base isolated. Sage watched the trajectory analysis with eyes that were calculating windage, distance, and firing position with professional accuracy. "Elevated position, approximately 40 feet above ground level," she murmured, almost to herself. "Soviet-era Dragunov, based on the ballistic signature. Shooter has about 400 rounds maximum, probably planning to pin down response teams until backup arrives." Her tactical assessment was so precise, so automatic, that Kane forgot to question how a maintenance worker could identify weapon types by sound. Dr. Cross was making notes as fast as she could write. Professional assessment, automatic threat evaluation, Operational vocabulary. This woman wasn't just former military. She was elite military, possibly the most elite. The facial recognition scan beeped completion. Kane looked at the results and felt the world shift beneath him. The image showed a woman in full special operations gear, face partially obscured by tactical equipment, but the visible features matched perfectly. The file was classified at levels Kane had never seen before. Classification: Operation Sandstorm. Status: KIA, body not recovered. Name: redacted, unit redacted. The only clear information was a service number and a nickname that made Kane's hands tremble. Angel of Death, confirmed kills, 47. Specialty: long-range elimination. Last known operation: Syria. Classified date of death: January 12, 3 years ago. 3 days before Sage Blackwood started working at Fort Carson. Kane stared at the screen, then at the woman who was supposed to be dead, then back at the screen. The implications were staggering. Either they were dealing with the most elaborate identity theft in military history, or the Angel of Death had been living among them for 3 years, hiding behind a maintenance uniform and a crutch. Rivers was still filming, but his social media audience had grown to thousands. Military personnel, intelligence analysts, and conspiracy theorists were flooding the comments with increasingly wild theories. She's Angel of Death. Fake death, deep cover, Black Ops gone civilian, most dangerous woman alive. Colonel Hayes reviewed the classified information and made a decision that would change everything. All Rangers, secure the perimeter but do not approach the subject. We're dealing with a situation that's way above our clearance level. But Sage had been listening to radio chatter, and she'd heard something that made her blood freeze. Secondary team in position, initiate school protocol. School protocol, not just military targets, civilian targets. The elementary school was less than 2 miles from the base, and if enemy teams were implementing widespread attack patterns, Sage looked at her crutch, then at the soldiers watching her with growing suspicion, then at the radio transmitting coordinates that suggested dozens of innocents were about to die. The choice between maintaining her cover and saving lives wasn't really a choice at all. She set the crutch aside and stood without it. The change was immediate and dramatic. Without the crutch forcing compensation, her natural posture emerged: military bearing, operational stance. The slight favor of her right leg was still present, but it was clearly manageable without support. Kane's weapon came up instinctively. Not quite aimed, but ready. "Ma'am, I need you to explain what just happened." Sage ignored him completely. She was listening to radio traffic, calculating response times, assessing threat levels to civilian populations. The classroom full of 6-year-olds wasn't going to protect itself. "How long to scramble air support?" she asked Colonel Hayes directly. The colonel blinked. "Ma'am, you don't have clearance for that information." "Children are about to die," Sage said simply. "How long?" The directness of her question, combined with the obvious tactical knowledge required to ask it, made Hayes realize they were no longer dealing with a maintenance worker with mysterious skills. They were dealing with a professional. 15 minutes for rotary wing, 30 for fixed wing, he answered automatically, then caught himself. "Ma'am, who exactly are you?" But Sage was already moving. She approached the weapons rack with purpose, selecting an M24 sniper rifle that had been tagged for maintenance. The weapon's scope was misaligned, and the firing pin had been damaged during a training accident the previous week. She examined the rifle with hands that knew every component intimately. "Scope alignment is off by 15 minutes of angle," she assessed. "Firing pin spring tension reduced by approximately 30%. Effective range limited to 600 meters. Kane stared. "Ma'am, that weapon has been evaluated by our best armorers. Your assessment matches their technical report exactly. How could you possibly know that?" Sage looked up from the rifle. For a moment, her civilian mask slipped completely, and everyone present saw the predator that lived beneath. "Because I've fired approximately 40,000 rounds through weapons exactly like this one," she said quietly. "And because 15 minutes ago, I could pretend to be someone else. But children are about to die. An Angel of Death doesn't let children die." The admission hung in the air like a detonation. Dr. Cross leaned forward against her window. The psychological profile was complete now. Combat stress reaction, protective instincts towards civilians, professional identity emerging under pressure. This woman was exactly who the classified files suggested. Rivers was still filming, but his hands were shaking. His social media post had exploded to viral status. with thousands of viewers watching live as the most wanted woman in special operations revealed herself on camera. Kane keyed his radio with trembling fingers. "Base, this is Range 7. We have a situation that requires immediate escalation to Joint Chiefs level. Range 7, clarify your situation." Kane looked at Sage, who was field stripping the damaged rifle with movements so fast they blurred. "Base, we have Angel of Death, alive, active, and requesting operational authority." The radio silence that followed lasted exactly 17 seconds. When base operations finally responded, their voice was different, higher authority, deeper classification. Range 7, maintain position, do not approach, do not engage, command authority en route. But Sage wasn't waiting for command authority. She had identified the problem with the firing pin and was improvising a solution using materials from her maintenance toolkit. Professional armorers would have needed specialized equipment and hours of work. She was accomplishing the same repair in minutes, using creativity born of desperation. Dr. Cross watched the technical precision with professional amazement. The fine motor control required for weapon maintenance was incompatible with the trembling hands she'd observed earlier, which meant the tremor was psychological, not physical. Stress response to social interaction, not combat operations. Classic symptoms of someone trying to suppress professional identity under civilian circumstances. "Ma'am," Kane said carefully, "whatever you're planning, you should wait for proper authorization." Sage looked up from her work. "Sergeant, how long have you been military?" 12 years, ma'am." "Combat deployments?" 4 tours, ma'am." "Children killed in those deployments?" Kane's expression darkened. "Ma'am, we don't target civilians." "No," Sage agreed, "but sometimes we're too slow to save them. Sometimes we worry about authorization while 6-year-olds die because we followed protocol instead of conscience." She returned to her work, hands moving with surgical precision. "I've been too slow before, Sergeant. I won't be too slow today." The advanced tactical communication systems used in modern military operations rely on encrypted frequency hopping technology that prevents enemy interception. These sophisticated devices integrate satellite uplink capabilities with quantum encryption protocols, featuring self-destruct mechanisms using thermite charges if compromised. Military-grade tactical smartphones incorporate biometric authentication and emergency beacon systems that have saved countless lives in hostile territories worldwide. The radio crackled again, more enemy transmissions, increasingly urgent. "Angel of Death confirmed active. Recommend immediate extraction. Repeat, recommend immediate extraction." But underneath the enemy chatter, a new transmission emerged. Child's voice, terrified, barely audible. "Help us. Please, there are men with guns." The transmission cut to static. Sage's hands stilled on the rifle. When she looked up, there was something in her eyes that made every soldier present take an involuntary step backward. "Sergeant Kane," she said quietly, "you have approximately 8 minutes before those children start dying. You can spend those 8 minutes following protocol, or you can spend them helping me save lives." Kane looked at the classified files on his tablet, then at the woman who was supposed to be dead, then at his radio transmitting desperate pleas from elementary school children. "Ma'am, what do you need?" Sage smiled for the first time since arriving at the range. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Spotting assistance in a clear field of fire," she said. "And everyone needs to stop calling me ma'am. My name is Sage, but when I'm working, most people call me Angel." She finished her improvised repairs and chambered around. The damaged weapon would only be effective at reduced range, but 600 meters was more than sufficient for what she had planned. "Dr. Cross," she called up to the psychology building, "I'm going to need you to coordinate with base medical. There are going to be casualties." Dr. Cross leaned out her window. "How many casualties?" Sage considered the question with professional calculation. "Depends on how many hostiles are threatening the school, but when Angel of Death goes to work, there are always casualties." She moved toward the elevated platform that would give her the best angle on the school compound. Without the crutch, her limp was noticeable, but manageable. Combat injury, not disability. Operational limitation, not incapacitation. Kane followed at a respectful distance, weapon ready but not aimed. "Ma'am, Sage, how do we know you're still one of the good guys?" Sage paused at the base of the platform. "Sergeant, I've been hiding among you for 3 years. If I wanted to hurt military personnel, I could have done it any time. The fact that you're all still breathing should tell you everything you need to know about my intentions." She began climbing the platform, favoring her injured leg but moving with determination. Besides, she added, good guys and bad guys is a luxury for people who don't have to watch children die. Rivers was narrating for his now massive online audience. Okay, this is insane. The woman they called a crippled maintenance worker is apparently some kind of legendary sniper who was supposed to be dead, and now she's about to... Holy cow, she's actually going to try to save those kids. Comments flooded in from around the world. Angel of Death is real. She's going to war. Those terrorists have no idea what's coming. R.I.P. to anyone threatening those children. Dr. Cross was on her radio, coordinating medical response and evacuation procedures. Her psychological assessment was complete, and the implications were staggering. They weren't dealing with a maintenance worker with PTSD. They were dealing with the most effective combat operative in modern military history, emerging from deep cover to protect innocents. Sage reached the top of the platform and settled into a prone firing position. The angle gave her a clear view of the elementary school compound, approximately 700 meters away, beyond the range of her damaged weapon, but she had worked with worse limitations before. She began her breathing exercises, slowing her heart rate, steadying her hands, entering the zone where Angel of Death lived. Kane climbed up beside her, tablet in hand. Sage, we're getting real-time intelligence from the school. Hostiles have taken position in the main building. Approximately 15 to 20 adults and 60 children are trapped inside. Sage absorbed the information without taking her eye from the scope. Hostage situation or terrorist operation. Based on their radio chatter, they're planning to make a statement. Political motivation. They want maximum casualties for maximum impact. Then they picked the wrong day to threaten children, Sage said quietly. She made a minute adjustment to her scope, compensating for the misalignment using mental calculations that would have impressed a ballistics computer. The mathematics of death had always come naturally to her. If you're getting goosebumps from what just happened, you're not alone. This story connects to something much bigger than anyone realizes. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because the next revelation is going to shock you to your core. The identity behind this woman will blow your mind. Through her scope, Sage could see movement in the school windows. Armed figures moving with military precision. Professional operators, not random terrorists. This was planned, coordinated, and designed to maximize psychological impact, which meant they'd studied her operational history and chosen their target specifically to force her out of hiding. Kane, she said softly, this isn't random. They know who I am. They know I won't let children die. This is a trap. Kane felt ice in his veins. Ma'am, if this is a trap, we should wait for backup. Backup won't arrive before they start executing hostages, Sage replied. And if this is a trap, it means they've been planning this for months, maybe years. She paused her breathing exercises and looked at Kane directly. Sergeant, 3 years ago, my team was betrayed. Someone sold us out to enemy forces in Syria. 7 operators died because of that betrayal, and I was supposed to die with them. The weight of her words settled over the platform like a shroud. If they've found me here, it means the same people who killed my team are behind this operation, which means this isn't just about saving children anymore. Kane understood the implications. This is about finishing what they started in Syria. Exactly, Sage confirmed. The question is whether you are willing to help me finish it first. She returned to her scope, tracking movement in the school building. Professional assessment revealed at least 6 hostile contacts, possibly more. Armed with automatic weapons, positioned to control all entry points. But Sage had spent 3 years studying this facility during her maintenance rounds. She knew every sightline, every approach route, every architectural detail that could provide tactical advantage. Kane, I need you to coordinate with base operations. Tell them Angel of Death is requesting operational authority under emergency protocols. Classification level, Charlie 7. Kane's eyes widened. Charlie 7 was presidential level authorization. Ma'am, I don't have clearance to make that request. You don't, Sage agreed, but Angel of Death does. She keyed her radio to a frequency that shouldn't have existed, using encryption codes that were supposed to have died with her in Syria. Overwatch command, this is Angel 7 requesting immediate operational authority. Classification, Charlie 7. Authentication, Whiskey Tango, 7-7. The response came within seconds, in a voice that carried the weight of the Pentagon itself. Angel 7, authentication confirmed. You are cleared for operation under executive authority. Rules of engagement: protect civilian assets by any means necessary. Kane stared at the radio in disbelief. Ma'am, you just got authorization from the Joint Chiefs to operate independently. No, Sage corrected, settling into her firing position. Angel of Death just got authorization to go to war. Through her scope, she watched armed figures positioning themselves near the windows where children were visible. Classic terrorist photography setup. They were planning to broadcast executions to maximize psychological impact. She made final adjustments to her scope, compensating for wind, distance, and the weapon's damage condition. Math had always been her strongest subject, and the mathematics of precision shooting were as familiar as breathing. Kane, I need radio contact with the school. Patch me through to their internal communications system. Kane worked with base communications, establishing a link. Within minutes, Sage was connected to the school's principal, who was hiding in a supply closet with her radio. This is Angel of Death, United States Special Operations. Ma'am, I need you to provide me with exact positions of hostile contacts and civilian locations. The principal's voice was terrified but controlled. There are 7 men with guns. They've locked the children in classrooms, but they're moving them to the gymnasium for some kind of, presentation. Sage's blood ran cold. Gymnasium meant centralized location, maximum casualties, professional execution setup. Ma'am, how long before they move the children? They said 10 minutes. Oh God, they're going to kill them all on camera. Sage looked at her damaged weapon, calculated distances and probabilities, and made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Ma'am, keep the children as low as possible. In exactly 8 minutes, things are going to get very loud, very fast. She cut the transmission and focused on her scope. 7 targets, 600-meter range, damaged weapon, and the lives of 60 children hanging in the balance. Dr. Cross watched from her window as Sage transformed from hiding civilian to operational military. The psychological shift was complete and terrifying. Every movement suggested lethal precision. Every breath calculated for maximum efficiency. Rivers continued his live broadcast to an audience that had grown to hundreds of thousands. Military personnel, government officials, and civilians around the world were watching the Angel of Death emerge from 3 years of hidden existence. This is history happening. Most dangerous woman alive. Angel of Death versus terrorists live. Those terrorists are about to meet their maker. Sage began her final preparations, checking wind conditions, adjusting for the weapon's limitations, entering the mental state where emotion disappeared and only precision remained. But as she prepared to engage, her radio crackled with a transmission that changed everything. A voice she recognized, a voice that should have been dead. Hello, Angel. Did you miss me? The voice belonged to Colonel Marcus Volkov, the man who'd betrayed her team in Syria, the man who was supposed to have died in the explosion that killed her teammates, the man who'd just revealed that this entire operation was designed specifically to draw her out of hiding. Sage's hand stilled on her weapon. Through her scope, she could see a figure in the school's main window, tall, military bearing, holding a radio. Colonel Marcus Volkov, alive, active, and using children as bait to finish what he had started 3 years ago. I know you're watching, Angel. I know you're planning to play hero, but this time, you're going to have to choose. He held up a device that made Sage's heart stop. Remote detonator. The school was rigged with explosives. Save the children and die, or maintain your cover and let them die. Either way, Angel of Death finally faces justice for what she cost my organization. The transmission ended, leaving Sage staring through her scope at the man who'd destroyed her life, killed her team, and now threatened 60 innocent children to force a final confrontation. Kane watched her expression change as the full magnitude of the situation became clear. Sage, what's our play? Sage looked at her damaged weapon, calculated the impossible odds, and smiled with an expression that would have terrified demons. Kane, Angel of Death doesn't choose between saving lives and staying alive, she said quietly. Angel of Death finds a third option. She keyed her radio to broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that Volkov, the terrorists, base command, and her growing online audience would all hear her response. Volkov, this is Angel of Death. You made 2 mistakes 3 years ago. First, you thought 7 special operators would be easy to kill. Second, you thought I'd stay dead just because you wanted me to. Her voice carried across the range, and every soldier present felt the temperature drop several degrees. Today you made a third mistake. You threaten children to get my attention. She chambered around and settled into her final firing position. You have my attention now, and I hope for your sake that you've made peace with whatever God you believe in, because Angel of Death is about to send you to meet him. The transmission ended, and Sage began the breathing pattern that had made her the most feared sniper in modern warfare. In 8 minutes, the world would remember why they called her the Angel of Death. And Colonel Marcus Volkov would learn that some angels don't forgive. They just deliver justice with extreme precision. Professional liability insurance for military contractors and defense personnel provides comprehensive coverage for operations in high-risk environments. Specialized policies protect against equipment loss, medical evacuation costs, and legal liability during classified missions. Premium coverage includes worldwide protection, emergency financial support, and comprehensive benefits for service-related disabilities, ensuring military families maintain financial security regardless of operational outcomes. 6 minutes until the children would be moved to the gymnasium. 6 minutes to neutralize 7 hostiles, disable explosive devices, and confront the man who destroyed her life 3 years ago. Sage adjusted her scope one final time, compensating for the weapon's damaged firing pin and misaligned optics. Through the crosshairs, she could see Volkov positioning himself near the gymnasium entrance, using children as human shields while his men prepared their execution setup. "Kane," she said quietly, "I need you to coordinate evacuation routes for when this goes loud. Children first, then civilian staff." Kane nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Sage, with that weapon's condition, you're looking at maybe 60% accuracy at this range. Against 7 targets using human shields, those aren't good odds." "Angel of Death doesn't work with good odds," Sage replied. "Angel of Death makes impossible odds possible." She began her breathing sequence, slowing her heart rate to the rhythm that had made her legendary, but as she settled into firing position, Kane noticed something that had been bothering him since the radio transmission. "Sage, how did Volkov know you were here? You've been maintaining perfect cover for 3 years. What changed?" The question hit like a physical blow. Sage's breathing pattern faltered as the implications became clear. Someone on base had blown her cover. Someone with access to classified personnel files and communication systems. Someone who'd been watching her for months, waiting for the perfect moment to spring Volkov's trap. "Kane, I need you to run a security check on anyone with access to my employment records. Someone here is working with Volkov." But before Kane could respond, her radio crackled with a transmission that made her blood freeze. "Angel, this is base communications. We're reading multiple hostile contacts approaching your position. Recommend immediate extraction." The voice was Dr. Cross, but something was wrong. The transmission protocol was incorrect, and the urgency seemed artificial. Sage keyed her radio carefully. "Dr. Cross, confirm your position and authentication code." Silence. Then laughter, male laughter, coming through Dr. Cross's radio frequency. "Very good, Angel. You always were paranoid about communication security." Volkov's voice transmitted through the base's own communication system, which meant he had people inside Fort Carson with access to their frequencies and protocols. Kane's face went white. "Sage, if he's got people on base, then this is bigger than just revenge," Sage finished. "This is a complete operational takeover." Through her scope, she watched Volkov signal to unseen personnel. Within seconds, base alarms began sounding, not the controlled alarm of a training exercise, but the chaos of a real emergency. Rivers, still broadcasting live to his massive online audience, grabbed his radio. "Base, this is Range 7. What's the status of those alarms?" The response came in a voice none of them recognized. "Range 7, this is Acting Base Commander. Fort Carson is under lockdown due to terrorist infiltration. All personnel are ordered to remain in position until security sweep is complete." Acting Base Commander, which meant something had happened to Colonel Hayes. Sage made a decision that would define everything that followed. She abandoned her sniper position and stood up, weapon in hand. "Kane, we're blown. Volkov's people have taken the base, and they're using the lockdown to isolate us while they finish with the children." Kane stared at her. "Ma'am, if we leave this position, we lose our only angle on the school. And if we stay here, we get surrounded by hostiles while children die," Sage replied. "Angel of Death doesn't fight defensive battles." She began moving toward the platform's ladder, her damaged legs slowing her progress but not stopping it. Kane followed, still trying to process the magnitude of their situation. "Sage, where exactly are we going?" "To save those children," she said simply, "and to finish what Volkov started 3 years ago." But as they reached the ladder, armed figures emerged from the maintenance building. Not rangers, not base security. Professional operators in civilian clothing, moving with military precision. Kane raised his weapon instinctively, but Sage was already moving. Despite her injured leg, she flowed into combat stance with fluid grace that belonged in war zones. "Contact front," Kane called out, but Sage was already engaging. Her first shot took down the lead operator with surgical precision. Damaged weapon or not, at close range her accuracy was absolute. The second hostile tried to flank left, but Sage had anticipated the movement and put him down with a shot that would have impressed Olympic marksmen. Kane provided covering fire, but he was watching a masterclass in close quarters combat. Sage moved like water, flowing around cover, anticipating enemy movements, placing shots with mechanical efficiency. "Holy cow," Rivers breathed into his phone camera. "She's not human. She's like a killing machine." His live audience was exploding with comments. "Angel of Death in action. This is what special operations looks like. Most dangerous woman alive confirmed." But the firefight had attracted attention. More armed figures were emerging from buildings across the base, and Sage realized the full scope of Volkov's operation. "Kane, this isn't just about revenge. He's taken the entire base. This is a military coup disguised as a terrorist attack." Kane absorbed the information while reloading. "Ma'am, if he's got control of the base, what's the end game?" Sage considered the tactical situation while engaging two more hostiles. Fort Carson houses classified weapons, communication systems, and intelligence databases. If Volkov controls all of that, she didn't need to finish. Kane understood. Volkov wasn't just trying to kill Angel of Death. He was stealing enough military assets to arm a small war. "We need to reach the command center," Sage decided. "If we can regain control of base communications, we can coordinate real backup." But their route was blocked by increasingly heavy resistance. Professional operators who knew their capabilities and had prepared accordingly. During a brief lull in fighting, Sage's radio crackled with a transmission that changed everything. "Angel, this is Dr. Cross. Real Dr. Cross. I'm trapped in the psychology building with visual on the school. They're moving the children now." Sage felt time compress around her. Children being moved meant execution was imminent, but reaching the school meant abandoning their assault on the command center. Choose between stopping Volkov's coup or saving 60 children. "Dr. Cross, how long before they reach the gymnasium?" 3 minutes, maybe 4. "Angel, there are explosives everywhere. The whole building is rigged." Kane looked at Sage's expression and saw the warrior calculating impossible odds. "Sage, we can't do both. Either we stop Volkov's takeover or we save the children." Sage looked at her damaged weapon, assessed the tactical situation, and made a choice that would define her forever. "Kane, Angel of Death doesn't choose between saving lives. Angel of Death finds a way to save everyone." She keyed her radio to broadcast on all frequencies. "All Fort Carson personnel, this is Angel of Death operating under executive authority. The base has been compromised by hostile forces led by Colonel Marcus Volkov. Children at the elementary school are in immediate danger." Her transmission cut through enemy communications like a blade. "Any loyal personnel who can hear this transmission, converge on the school. Ignore all other orders. Save the children first." But Volkov's response came immediately. "Angel, always the hero, but heroes die when they try to save everyone." Through her scope, Sage could see him in the school window, holding the detonator. "You have 2 minutes before I start executing children. Come alone, unarmed, or they all die." Kane stared at her. "Sage, that's obviously a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Sage agreed. "But it's also an opportunity." She began moving toward the school, damaged weapons slung across her back. Kane followed, still trying to understand her plan. "Ma'am, how is walking into a trap an opportunity?" Sage smiled with an expression that would have terrified angels. "Because Volkov thinks he knows Angel of Death. He thinks I'm the same operator who followed orders and trusted the system 3 years ago." They were moving through hostile territory now, using maintenance routes that Sage had mapped during her 3 years of cover employment. "But Angel of Death learned something during those 3 years hiding among you," she continued. "I learned that the most dangerous weapon isn't training or equipment or tactical knowledge." Kane waited for the revelation. "The most dangerous weapon is being underestimated by people who think they know who you are." What you're about to see defies everything you thought you knew about military legends. Before we reveal the truth that will change everything, make sure to share this video with someone who needs to see that heroes walk among us in the most unexpected forms. The revelation is coming. They reached the school perimeter as Volkov's deadline approached. Through windows, they could see armed figures positioning children in the gymnasium while cameras recorded everything. Sage assessed the situation with professional calm. 7 hostiles, 60 civilians, explosives throughout the building, and Volkov controlling everything from a position that provided perfect oversight of all approaches. Tactically, it was suicide. Strategically, it was exactly what she needed. "Kane, I'm going in through the main entrance. Exactly what Volkov expects." Kane stared at her. "Ma'am, that's suicide." "No," Sage corrected. "That's misdirection. While he's focused on me walking into his trap, you're going to circle around and disable his explosives." Kane absorbed the plan. "Ma'am, I don't have demolitions training." "You don't need demolitions training," Sage replied. "You just need to cut the right wires." She handed him a small device that looked like a maintenance tool, but was clearly much more sophisticated. "Explosive detection scanner. Follow the readings to the primary charges, then cut any wire that isn't red. Red wires are fail-safes. Cut those and the whole building goes up." Kane took the device with trembling hands. "Sage, how do you just happen to have military-grade bomb detection equipment?" "Because Angel of Death always has contingency plans," she said simply, "even when she's pretending to be maintenance personnel." She checked her weapon one final time, then looked at Kane with an expression that carried 3 years of hidden purpose. "Kane, when this is over, if I don't make it out, I need you to understand something. Every day for 3 years, I've watched soldiers like you risk everything to protect people who don't even know you exist." Kane felt the weight of her words. "Today, you get to be the hero. Don't waste it." She began walking toward the school's main entrance, damaged leg creating a slight limp that made her appear vulnerable to anyone watching through scopes. But Kane noticed something that Volkov couldn't see from his elevated position. Sage's limp was on the wrong leg. She was faking disability to appear more damaged than she actually was. Kane keyed his radio as he moved toward the building's rear entrance. "Sage, your limp is on the wrong side." "I know," came her quiet response. "Angel of Death has been faking a lot of things for 3 years. Time to stop pretending." As she approached the main entrance, Volkov's voice boomed through external speakers. "Angel of Death, stop where you are and drop your weapon." Sage complied, setting her rifle on the ground and raising her hands. To any observer, she looked like a defeated operative surrendering to superior force. But Dr. Cross, watching from her window, noticed details that others missed. Sage's stance was too balanced, her breathing too controlled. This wasn't surrender. This was preparation. The school's main door opened, and armed figures emerged to escort Sage inside. Professional operators who knew her reputation and were taking no chances. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. Base alarms suddenly changed pattern. Not the general lockdown signal that had been sounding, but the specific emergency code that meant all hands, repel boarders. Real Fort Carson personnel were fighting back. Kane's demolition work was proceeding according to plan. The explosive detection scanner led him to primary charges throughout the building, and his careful wire cutting was systematically disabling Volkov's fail-safe systems. But inside the gymnasium, Volkov was getting desperate. "Bring her in! Now!" Armed figures grabbed Sage's arms and forced her through the entrance. But as they manhandled her, one of them gripped her shoulder too tightly, trying to control her movement. The fabric of her gray t-shirt, already stressed from earlier combat, began to tear under the pressure. Sage felt the material giving way, and realized that her 3 years of perfect cover were about to end in the most dramatic way possible. The shirt tore at the shoulder seam, exposing the upper portion of her back and neck. And there, in stark black ink against her pale skin, was the distinctive tattoo that had made her legendary. A snake's head, rendered in sharp geometric lines that seemed to move in the fluorescent lighting. The signature marking of Angel of Death, photographed by intelligence agencies worldwide but never seen this clearly. The hostile gripping her arm stopped walking, stopped breathing, stopped thinking as the full implications of what he was seeing penetrated his professional composure. "Holy cow," he whispered, loud enough for his radio headset to pick up the transmission. The gymnasium fell silent. 60 children, 7 terrorists, and one of the most wanted women in special operations, all frozen in a moment that would define everything that followed. Volkov's voice came through radio speakers, but the confidence had been replaced by something approaching fear. The Angel of Death tattoo. It's real. She's real. Dr. Cross leaned forward against her window, watching history unfold. The psychological profile was complete. The woman who had been hiding among them for 3 years wasn't just former military. She was the military legend that enemy forces told stories about to frighten new recruits. Private Jensen, monitoring communications from his position, keyed his radio with shaking hands. "Base, this is Range 7 Auxiliary. We have confirmed visual on Angel of Death tattoo. Subject is authentic." The transmission went out on all frequencies, reaching military personnel worldwide who had followed the developing situation. Kane, working to disable explosives in the building's basement, heard the confirmation and felt ice in his veins. He'd been joking around with the most dangerous woman alive for 3 months. Rivers, still broadcasting live to hundreds of thousands of viewers, whispered into his phone camera, "Guys, this is real. The Angel of Death tattoo. Everyone said it was a myth, but it's real, and she's right there." Comments exploded across his feed. "Angel of Death, confirmed. The tattoo is real. Most dangerous woman alive. Those terrorists are dead." But inside the gymnasium, Volkov had regained his composure. He emerged from his command position, weapon trained on the nearest group of children. "Angel of Death," he said, his voice carrying across the space like a death sentence. 3 years, I've been planning this moment." Sage looked around the gymnasium, cataloging hostiles, civilian positions, explosive devices, and tactical options. Her torn shirt hung loosely, the snake tattoo clearly visible to everyone present. "Hello, Marcus," she said quietly. "You look good for a dead man." Volkov laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Dead? I was never dead, Angel. I was just waiting for the right moment to finish what we started in Syria." "You mean the part where you betrayed 7 special operators for money?" Sage asked. "Or the part where you thought killing me would cover up your treason?" "I mean the part where Angel of Death finally faces justice for destroying my organization," Volkov replied. "Do you know how much money you cost me? How many operations you compromised?" Sage considered the question with professional calm. Not enough, apparently, since you're still breathing. The exchange was being broadcast through base communications, reaching military personnel who had followed Angel of Death's career with professional respect and personal terror. Colonel Hayes, who had been detained but not killed, listened from his holding cell and felt pieces clicking into place. Sage Blackwood. 3 years of perfect civilian behavior. No military bearing, no operational security, no hints of special training, except for the times when she'd fixed equipment that professional technicians couldn't repair, except for the way she'd moved through the base like she was conducting surveillance, except for the fact that she'd somehow ended up assigned to maintenance positions that gave her access to every classified facility on the installation. Angel of Death hadn't been hiding at Fort Carson. Angel of Death had been conducting a 3-year counterintelligence operation, waiting for her traitors to reveal themselves. Kane finished disabling the last explosive device and keyed his radio. "Sage, all charges neutralized. Building is safe." But Volkov had heard the transmission. "Clever, Angel, but you're forgetting something important." He raised his weapon toward the nearest child, a 6-year-old girl with blonde hair who reminded Sage of herself at that age. "I don't need explosives to kill children." Sage felt time slow around her as training, instinct, and 3 years of suppressed rage combined into something that transcended human limitation. She was 15 feet from Volkov, unarmed, surrounded by hostiles, with 60 children depending on her next decision. Tactically impossible, operationally suicide, exactly the kind of situation where Angel of Death had always excelled. "Marcus," she said quietly, "you made a mistake." Volkov kept his weapon trained on the child. "What mistake is that? You assumed Angel of Death was the most dangerous thing in this room." Sage's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, weight settling into a stance that trained operators would recognize as the prelude to violence. "But Angel of Death is just what they called me when I was following orders and playing by rules." Her voice dropped to something that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to primal fear centers. "You're not facing Angel of Death anymore, Marcus. You're facing Sage Blackwood, and Sage Blackwood doesn't follow anyone's rules." What happened next would be analyzed by military tacticians for decades. Sage moved like water flowing downhill, fast and inevitable, and absolutely unstoppable. Her first step took her past the nearest hostile's guard. Her second step positioned her weapon hand for the disarm. Her third step put her between Volkov and the children. The hostile never had time to fire. One moment he was holding an assault rifle, the next moment Sage was holding it, and he was unconscious on the floor. Volkov tried to track her movement, but Angel of Death had trained for exactly this scenario. Close quarters, multiple hostiles, civilian protection, no backup. Her first shot took down the terrorist threatening children on the left side of the gymnasium. Her second shot eliminated the hostile controlling the main exit. Her third shot disabled the man operating the camera equipment. Professional precision, mechanical efficiency, and absolutely no hesitation. Volkov finally got a shot off, but Sage was no longer where he expected her to be. 3 years of maintenance work had taught her every inch of this building, including structural elements that could provide cover. Impossible, he breathed, tracking her movement through iron sights. No one moves that fast. But Dr. Cross, watching through her window with professional fascination, understood what she was seeing. This wasn't superhuman speed. This was perfect preparation meeting perfect opportunity. Sage had been planning for this exact scenario since the day she started working at Fort Carson. Volkov's fourth and fifth shots missed as Sage flowed through the gymnasium like she'd choreographed every step. Her return fire was precise, methodical, and absolutely lethal. Within 90 seconds, 6 of the 7 terrorists were down. Only Volkov remained, and he was beginning to understand that he'd made a fundamental error in tactical assessment. He wasn't hunting Angel of Death. Angel of Death was hunting him. "Children, close your eyes and count to 10, Sage called out, her voice carrying maternal authority that made 60 scared kids immediately obey. Then she turned her full attention to the man who had killed her team. "Marcus, it's just you and me now, the way it should have been 3 years ago." Volkov was sweating despite the gymnasium's air conditioning. "Angel, you can't kill me. I'm your only link to the people who ordered the betrayal." "Wrong again," Sage replied, moving closer with predatory patience. "You're my only remaining target. I already found the others." The admission hit Volkov like a physical blow. "That's impossible. The syndicate has hundreds of members." "Had," Sage corrected. Past tense. "Did you think I spent 3 years hiding at Fort Carson for my health?" She was close enough now that Volkov could see the snake tattoo clearly, could see the professional calm that had made her legendary. Every maintenance request that took me to different military bases, every repair job that gave me access to classified communications, every seemingly random assignment that put me in contact with suspicious personnel. Volkov's face went white as understanding dawned. "You've been hunting us." "For 3 years, Sage confirmed, systematically, methodically, and very, very quietly. She raised her weapon with movements that spoke of absolute professional confidence. "You're the last one, Marcus. When you're gone, my team can finally rest." But Volkov had one final gambit. "Angel, the children!" He wasn't aiming at Sage anymore. His weapon was trained on the group of 6-year-olds who were counting with their eyes closed, trusting that the nice lady would keep them safe. Sage felt the mathematics of the situation shift. She could kill Volkov, but not before he killed at least 3 children. She could save the children, but Volkov would escape to rebuild his organization. Choose between justice and innocence. Choose between vengeance and protection. Choose between Angel of Death and Sage Blackwood. For 3 years, she'd been planning for this exact moment, and she'd always known what choice she would make. "You're right, Marcus. The children come first." She lowered her weapon. Volkov smiled with the satisfaction of a predator who'd cornered his prey. "Always the hero, Angel. That's what makes you predictable." But as he prepared to fire, something happened that he hadn't accounted for. 60 children stopped counting and opened their eyes. And 60 children saw a man pointing a gun at the nice lady who'd been trying to save them. What followed wasn't tactical. It wasn't professional. It wasn't anything that would appear in military manuals. It was simply 60 scared, angry children deciding that someone was threatening their protector. They moved like a wave, overwhelming Volkov's position through sheer numbers and righteous fury. 6-year-olds don't understand tactics, but they understand right and wrong with crystal clarity. Volkov went down under a pile of elementary school students who were done being scared. Sage watched with professional amazement as children accomplished what she'd been planning to do with precision gunfire. Sometimes the best tactical plan was no plan at all. Kane entered the gymnasium through the rear access, having completed his demolition work, and stopped dead at the scene before him. 60 children holding down one of the world's most wanted terrorists, while Angel of Death stood guard with maternal authority. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "what exactly happened here?" Sage looked around the gymnasium at the scattered weapons, unconscious hostiles, and pile of children delivering playground justice to a man who'd threatened them. "Kane, I think Angel of Death just got replaced by something much more dangerous." Kane waited for clarification. 60 children who aren't afraid anymore. Advanced tactical training programs for military and law enforcement personnel incorporate cutting-edge simulation technology and real-world scenario preparation. Professional certification courses in tactical medicine, crisis negotiation, and specialized weapon systems provide career advancement opportunities. Online military education platforms offer flexible scheduling for active duty personnel with courses in strategic planning, leadership development, and advanced combat techniques taught by industry experts. Base security finally arrived, led by the real Colonel Hayes, who had been freed when loyal personnel retook the command center. They found a scene that would require extensive after-action reports. 7 hostile operatives neutralized, 60 children safe and unharmed, multiple explosive devices disabled, and Angel of Death standing in the middle of it all, snake tattoo visible, torn shirt hanging loose, looking like a warrior goddess who'd just finished saving the world. "Sage," Colonel Hayes said carefully, "I think we need to have a conversation about your employment history." Sage looked around the gymnasium at the children who were being reunited with teachers, at the soldiers who were securing the area, at the cameras that had recorded everything for the world to see. Her cover was blown, her secret was exposed. 3 years of careful hiding had ended in the most dramatic revelation possible, and she felt more free than she had since Syria. "Colonel," she said quietly, "I think Angel of Death is ready to stop pretending to be someone else." Hayes nodded slowly. "We'll need a full debrief. Classification level, Charlie 7. "Of course, sir. But first, I need to check on Dr. Cross. She's been coordinating from the psychology building, and she's probably got questions." Kane looked at the tactical situation, then at Sage, then back at the situation. "Ma'am, with all due respect, what happens now? Volkov's been captured, the children are safe, but this whole operation was broadcast live to the world." Sage considered the question while helping children reunite with their families. The implications were staggering. Her identity was now public knowledge. Angel of Death was no longer a classified legend. She was a verified, documented, recorded reality. Kane, what happens now is that Angel of Death stops hiding and starts doing the job she was trained for. Rivers was still broadcasting to his massive audience, providing commentary on the most dramatic military operation ever recorded live. "Folks, I don't know how to describe what we just witnessed. A woman that everyone thought was disabled maintenance personnel turned out to be the most legendary sniper in modern warfare, and she just saved 60 children while taking down an entire terrorist cell." His audience was exploding with responses from military personnel around the world. "Angel of Death confirmed active. Most incredible thing ever recorded. She's a real-life superhero. Those children are the luckiest kids alive." Dr. Cross finally emerged from the psychology building, having spent the entire operation documenting everything for what would become the most comprehensive analysis of special operations psychology ever compiled. "Sage," she called out as she approached the gymnasium, "we need to talk." Sage looked up from where she was helping a 6-year-old girl reunite with her mother. The child had wrapped her arms around Sage's neck and was refusing to let go. "What about, Dr. Cross?" "About the psychological profile I've been building for 3 years. About what it means for someone with your capabilities to successfully integrate into civilian life. About what happens when Angel of Death decides she doesn't want to be dead anymore." Sage gently extracted herself from the child's embrace and stood to face the psychologist who'd been watching her more carefully than anyone realized. "Dr. Cross, what's your professional assessment?" "My professional assessment is that you're the most psychologically healthy special operations veteran I've ever studied. You maintained perfect civilian cover while planning a 3-year counterintelligence operation. You integrated completely into a community that had no idea who you were. And when the situation required it, you transitioned back to operational status without losing any of your civilian emotional connections." Dr. Cross paused, looking around at the children who were still gravitating towards Sage despite the fact that she was clearly military. Sage, you didn't just fake being civilian, you actually became civilian while remaining military. That's supposed to be psychologically impossible. Kane was listening to this assessment while coordinating cleanup operations. Ma'am, what does that mean in practical terms? It means, Dr. Cross said slowly, that Angel of Death figured out how to be both a warrior and a protector without letting either identity destroy the other. The consequences of what just happened will reshape this entire military base. If you want to see more stories about hidden warriors and the price they pay for serving in shadows, that notification bell is your best friend. This story connects to something even bigger. Colonel Hayes approached with a tablet full of messages from higher authority. Sage, I've got the Pentagon, CIA, NSA, and approximately 12 other agencies that want to debrief you immediately. Sage looked at the tablet, then at the children who were still being reunited with families, then at the soldiers who were looking at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Colonel, tell them Angel of Death will be available for debriefing after she finishes helping children get home safely. Hayes blinked. Ma'am, these are priority alpha communications from the highest levels of government. And these are 6-year-olds who just survived a terrorist attack, Sage replied calmly. The Pentagon can wait. Children can't. She returned to her work, helping coordinate family reunifications and providing comfort to traumatized kids who seemed to find her presence reassuring, despite the fact that she'd just killed 6 people in front of them. Kane watched this interaction with growing understanding. Colonel, I think we're dealing with something new here. Hayes looked at Kane questioningly. Sir, Angel of Death was trained to eliminate threats and complete missions, but Sage Blackwood learned to protect people and build community. What we've got now is someone who can do both. Dr. Cross was taking notes as fast as she could write. This is unprecedented. We're looking at the evolution of special operations psychology, the integration of warrior and civilian identities into something that's more effective than either alone. But their analysis was interrupted by a transmission that changed everything. Sage's encrypted radio, the one she'd used to contact Overwatch Command, crackled with an incoming message. Angel 7, this is Overwatch Actual. Situation report, please. Sage looked around at the gymnasium full of safe children, the neutralized threats, and the exposed reality of her 3-year operation. Overwatch Actual, this is Angel 7. Mission parameters have changed. Angel of Death is no longer classified. Silence on the radio, then a voice that carried the weight of the Pentagon itself. Angel 7, clarify your status. Overwatch Actual, Angel 7 is transitioning from covert operations to overt protection. Cover identity is blown, but operational effectiveness is enhanced. More silence, then a question that would define the future of special operations. Angel 7, are you requesting extraction or reassignment? Sage looked around at Fort Carson, at the soldiers who had become her colleagues, at the children who were depending on her, at the community that had unknowingly become her home. Overwatch Actual, Angel 7 is requesting permanent assignment to Fort Carson with dual classification. Covert operations as needed. Overt protection as primary mission. The request was unprecedented. Special operations personnel didn't request stationary assignments. They went where missions required, completed objectives, and moved on. They didn't ask to stay home and protect communities. But Angel of Death had learned something during 3 years of pretending to be civilian. Home was worth protecting. Angel 7, your request is approved. Welcome to the next phase of Special Operations evolution. The transmission ended, leaving Sage standing in a gymnasium full of safe children, surrounded by soldiers who finally knew who she really was, with the freedom to be both Angel of Death and Sage Blackwood without having to choose between them. Kane looked around at the aftermath of the operation. Ma'am, what does permanent assignment mean for Fort Carson? Sage considered the question while a 6-year-old boy tugged on her torn shirt to get her attention. It means this base just became the safest military installation in the world, she said quietly. And it means anyone who threatens this community is going to learn why they call me Angel of Death. Dr. Cross was still taking notes. Sage, from a psychological perspective, this is remarkable. You've successfully integrated 2 incompatible identities into something that's more effective than either alone. Dr. Cross, Angel of Death was never incompatible with civilian life. Angel of Death just needed to find civilians worth protecting. She looked around the gymnasium at children reuniting with families, at soldiers securing the area, at a community that had just discovered they'd been protected by a legend for 3 years without knowing it. And I found them. Rivers was wrapping up his live broadcast to an audience that had grown to over 1 million viewers. Folks, I've been broadcasting for 6 hours, and I still can't believe what we just witnessed. A disabled maintenance worker turned out to be the most legendary sniper in modern warfare, and she just saved 60 children while taking down an international terrorist. But as he prepared to end the broadcast, his phone buzzed with an encrypted message that made his blood run cold. Your broadcast has been noted. Angel of Death eliminated 1 cell, but there are others. Continue documentation. More will come. The message was unsigned, but the implications were clear. Volkov's organization had been larger than anyone realized, and Sage's exposure had painted a target on Fort Carson that would attract threats from around the world. Kane noticed Rivers' expression change. Everything all right? Rivers showed him the message. Kane read it twice, then keyed his radio. Sage, we might have a problem. Sage looked up from where she was helping a teacher account for all her students. What kind of problem? The kind where exposing Angel of Death just made Fort Carson the most wanted target in international terrorism. Sage absorbed this information while continuing her work with the children. After a moment, she smiled with an expression that would have terrified demons. Kane, let them come. Angel of Death spent 3 years learning how to protect this community. She looked around at the soldiers, civilians, and children who had become her family. Now they're about to learn what happens when someone threatens Angel of Death's family. Dr. Cross was still writing notes. Sage, from a tactical perspective, what's your assessment of future threats? Dr. Cross, my assessment is that anyone stupid enough to attack Fort Carson is going to discover that Angel of Death has had 3 years to prepare defenses. She gestured toward the children, who were finally being released to go home with their families. And anyone who threatens these children is going to learn that there are worse things than death. Colonel Hayes received another priority transmission from higher authority. Sage, Washington wants to know your operational status and availability for immediate deployment. Sage looked at the colonel, then at the children, then at the soldiers who had spent the day learning that legends could hide among them. Colonel, tell Washington that Angel of Death is exactly where she needs to be. The gymnasium was finally clearing out as families completed reunifications and security teams finished processing the scene. Sage was one of the last to leave, helping ensure that every child had been accounted for and every family had been contacted. Kane waited for her near the exit. Ma'am, what happens now? Your cover is blown, your identity is public, and half the world knows where to find you. Sage looked back at the gymnasium where she'd transitioned from hidden maintenance worker to revealed legend in a single afternoon. Kane, what happens now is that Angel of Death stops hiding and starts living. She walked out of the school building, torn shirt hanging loose, snake tattoo visible to anyone who looked, limp completely gone now that she didn't need to maintain the disability facade. The sun was setting over Fort Carson, painting the mountains in shades of gold and red. Sage stopped to appreciate the view, something she'd done countless times during her 3 years of cover employment. But this was the first time she'd done it as herself. Kane stood beside her, still processing the day's revelations. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. During those 3 years, when you were pretending to be maintenance personnel, were you ever actually happy? Sage considered the question while watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded her of better times. Kane, I wasn't pretending to be happy. I was actually happy. That's what made the cover so perfect. She turned to face him, and for the first time since the crisis began, she looked completely at peace. Angel of Death learned how to be human again, and Sage Blackwood learned how to be a warrior. What we are now is both. Kane nodded slowly. Ma'am, what about the threats? The people who are going to come looking for you? Sage looked around at Fort Carson, at the base that had unknowingly become her home, at the community that had accepted her without knowing who she really was. Kane, let them come. Angel of Death has been waiting 3 years for a real challenge. She started walking toward the base, moving with the confident stride of someone who no longer had to hide. Besides, she added with a smile that would have terrified her enemies, they have no idea what Angel of Death learned during those 3 years of hiding. Kane hurried to keep up. What did you learn? I learned that the most dangerous warrior isn't someone who fights for duty or country or mission objectives. Sage looked back at the school where 60 children had gone home safe because she'd been there to protect them. The most dangerous warrior is someone who fights for family. The lights of Fort Carson spread out below them as they walked back to base. Somewhere in those lights were soldiers who had learned that legends could hide among them. Somewhere were families whose children had been saved by a maintenance worker who turned out to be a myth made real. And somewhere, in places around the world that Angel of Death had spent 3 years mapping, were threats that were about to discover that the most feared sniper in modern warfare had found something worth protecting. Kane's radio crackled with one final transmission of the day. Fort Carson Base, this is Overwatch Command. Angel 7's new mission parameters are confirmed. Designation, Home Guard. Classification, as needed. Authority, executive level. The transmission paused. Angel 7, welcome home. Sage keyed her radio one last time. Overwatch Command, this is Angel 7. Mission accepted. Home Guard active. She looked around at the base lights, at the mountains, at the sky full of stars that she'd been watching for 3 years while planning for a day exactly like this one. Angel of Death is home. The radio went silent, leaving only the sound of evening wind across Fort Carson and the distant laughter of children who were safe in their beds because a maintenance worker had turned out to be their guardian angel. Kane walked beside her in comfortable silence, still processing the transformation he'd witnessed. Tomorrow would bring questions, debriefings, and media attention that would change everything. But tonight, Fort Carson was safe, the children were home, and Angel of Death had finally stopped pretending to be someone else. In the distance, encrypted communications were already buzzing between intelligence agencies around the world. Plans were being made, resources allocated, threats assessed. Angel of Death was no longer a classified secret. Angel of Death was a publicly confirmed reality with a known location and a declared mission to protect one specific community. Every terrorist organization, criminal syndicate, and enemy intelligence service on Earth now knew exactly where to find the most dangerous woman alive. They were going to find her at home, protecting her family, and they were about to learn that Angel of Death had spent 3 years preparing for exactly this scenario. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in 3 years, Angel of Death was going to fight it as herself. 3 days later, the transformation of Fort Carson was already visible. Military personnel who had walked past Sage hundreds of times without a second glance now stood at attention when she approached. The casual nods and brief conversations of her maintenance worker days had been replaced by formal salutes and respectful distances that felt more isolating than her years of hiding. Dr. Cross found her in the early morning hours, sitting alone in the same maintenance shed where she'd spent countless shifts repairing equipment and listening to base communications. The space looked different now, somehow smaller, as if her revealed identity had changed the very dimensions of her sanctuary. "How are you adjusting to the new reality?" Dr. Cross asked, settling into the chair that Kane had occupied during countless coffee breaks, when Sage was still pretending to be someone forgettable. "It's strange," Sage admitted, her hands working automatically to repair a radio that didn't really need fixing. "For 3 years, I was invisible. People saw what they expected to see. Now they see what they're afraid to see." Dr. Cross made notes in the ever-present notebook that had documented Sage's psychological profile. Fear isn't necessarily negative. Respect often begins with a healthy understanding of capability. Respect, maybe, but I miss the conversations. Sage set down her tools and looked out the small window toward the morning training exercises. Private Martinez used to complain to me about his girlfriend. Sergeant Willis would bring me pictures of her new baby. Captain Thompson always asked my opinion about his carburetor problems. She paused, watching soldiers move through their routines with the precision that had become second nature. They talked to me because I was safe, harmless, just the broken maintenance lady who listened without judgment. Dr. Cross understood the loss. And now I'm Angel of Death. Legend made manifest. They don't complain to legends about relationship problems. The radio repair was complete, but Sage continued working, finding comfort in the familiar motions. Her hands remained steady, the tremor that had characterized her civilian persona completely absent now that she no longer needed to maintain the facade. Kane appeared in the doorway, morning coffee in hand, and an expression that suggested official business. "Ma'am, Colonel Hayes wants to see you in the command center. Priority briefing." Sage stood, automatically checking the placement of the sidearm that she now wore openly. The weight felt familiar, comforting in a way that her crutch never had. Any indication what this is about? Kane's expression darkened. Intelligence intercepts. Chatter about Fort Carson from organizations that weren't talking about us before this week. The walk to the command center provided a stark illustration of how dramatically things had changed. Soldiers who had previously ignored Sage's existence now tracked her movement with careful attention. Not hostility, but the hyper-aware focus that military personnel reserve for potential threats or VIPs. She missed being invisible. The command center buzzed with activity that felt different from the routine operations she'd observed during her maintenance rounds. Screens displayed global intelligence feeds, communication arrays processed encrypted transmissions, and personnel moved with the urgency of an installation under active threat assessment. Colonel Hayes looked up as she entered, his expression mixing respect with the slight unease that had characterized most of their interactions since the school incident. "Sage, we need to discuss the intelligence picture that's developed since your exposure." He gestured toward the main display screen, which showed a world map peppered with red indicators that looked ominous even to someone with Sage's operational experience. These are confirmed communications intercepts mentioning Angel of Death, Fort Carson, or both. NSA, CIA, and allied intelligence services have been monitoring chatter since your identity went public. Sage studied the display with professional calm. The red indicators spanned 6 continents and included locations she recognized from previous operations. How many distinct organizations? At least 15 confirmed, possibly more. Terrorist cells, criminal syndicates, state-sponsored intelligence services, and several unidentified groups. Kane joined them at the display, pointing to clusters of indicators in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. "Ma'am, some of these are organizations you've previously engaged. They're treating this as an opportunity for revenge. And others," Colonel Hayes continued, "see this as an opportunity for recruitment or elimination. You represent either a significant threat to be neutralized or a significant asset to be acquired." Sage absorbed the information while calculating response strategies. 15 organizations represented a threat level that would normally require immediate extraction and relocation to a classified safe house. But Angel of Death had never been normal. "Colonel, what's the Pentagon's recommendation?" Hayes consulted his tablet, reading from classified communications that had been flowing steadily since the gymnasium incident. Immediate extraction to an undisclosed location, full witness protection protocols, new identity, new assignment, complete severance from Fort Carson. The recommendation hung in the air like a death sentence. Not physical death, but the death of everything Sage had built during 3 years of careful civilian integration. And if I decline that recommendation, then Fort Carson becomes the most heavily defended military installation in the continental United States. We've already received authorization for enhanced security measures, additional personnel, and upgraded defensive systems. Dr. Cross looked up from her notes. "Sage, from a psychological perspective, how do you feel about the prospect of leaving?" The question cut deeper than tactical assessments or threat evaluations. Sage looked around the command center at people who had unknowingly become her colleagues, her community, her family. "Dr. Cross, for 3 years I've been planning to die here, not because of threats or missions, but because this place became home in a way that nowhere else ever has." She moved to the window overlooking the base housing where families were beginning their morning routines. Children walking to school buses, parents heading to work, the normal rhythm of a community that felt safe because they trusted the military to protect them. Leaving would be tactically sound and strategically logical. It would also be the end of everything that made Angel of Death human again. Kane joined her at the window. "Ma'am, what if there was a third option?" Both Hayes and Dr. Cross looked at him questioningly. "What if we don't run from the threats? What if we prepare for them?" Sage turned from the window, interest sharpening her focus. "Elaborate." "Ma'am, Angel of Death spent 3 years learning every inch of this base, every approach route, every defensive position. You know this terrain better than anyone." Kane moved to the tactical display, highlighting Fort Carson's geographical position. "We're surrounded by natural defensive barriers, mountain approaches that can be monitored and controlled, limited access routes that can be secured or eliminated, and we have something that most military installations don't have, which is, we have Angel of Death, not hiding, not pretending, not operating under cover. We have the most effective special operations soldier in modern warfare defending terrain she's had 3 years to prepare." Colonel Hayes considered the proposal with growing interest. You're suggesting we turn Fort Carson into a fortress. I'm suggesting we turn Fort Carson into a demonstration, Kane corrected. A demonstration of what happens when you threaten American military families under Angel of Death's protection. Dr. Cross was writing furiously. From a psychological warfare perspective, this could be incredibly effective. Instead of hiding Angel of Death, we showcase her, make potential threats understand exactly what they would be facing. Sage looked around the command center at faces that were beginning to show enthusiasm for a plan that violated every standard protocol for protecting high-value assets. Colonel, has the Pentagon considered the deterrent effect of visible protection versus hidden protection? Hayes consulted his communications again. Actually, yes. There's a faction arguing that your exposure could be used strategically, make you visible enough that threats understand the cost of targeting this installation. And the opposing faction argues that visibility makes you a target for every organization with a grudge against American special operations. Sage moved back to the tactical display, studying approach routes and defensive positions with the eye of someone who had spent 3 years unconsciously preparing for exactly this scenario. Colonel, I'd like to propose a compromise. Hayes waited for her assessment. We make Angel of Death visible, but we make her visible doing what she does best, protecting people, not hiding in bunkers or running from threats, but actively demonstrating why threatening American families is a strategically unsound decision. Dr. Cross looked up from her notes. You're talking about psychological warfare on a global scale. I'm talking about community defense on a personal scale, Sage corrected. There's a difference. She pointed to the base housing visible through the command center windows. Those families down there trusted Fort Carson to keep them safe before they knew Angel of Death was here. Now they know. The question is whether we use that knowledge to make them more secure or more vulnerable. Kane understood the distinction. Ma'am, you're saying we don't change what you do, we just stop hiding what you are. Exactly. Angel of Death has been protecting this community for 3 years. The only thing that's changed is that now everyone knows it. Colonel Hayes received another priority communication that made his expression shift towards something approaching relief. Sage, I just received authorization for Operation Home Guard, full defensive enhancement of Fort Carson with you as primary security coordinator. Sage felt something she hadn't experienced since Syria, official authorization to do what she'd been doing anyway, with the resources and support to do it properly. What does that entail? Hayes read from the classified briefing. Enhanced perimeter security, upgraded surveillance systems, additional personnel, and complete tactical authority for you to coordinate base defense as you see fit. Dr. Cross was taking notes rapidly. This is unprecedented. They're essentially giving Angel of Death her own military installation to defend. Not her own installation, Kane corrected. Her home. There's a difference. Sage looked around the command center one more time, then out at the base where children were boarding school buses under the protection of soldiers who now knew exactly who was watching over them. Colonel, I accept the assignment, with one modification. Hayes waited for her terms. Angel of Death operates during threats and emergencies. Day to day, I remain Sage Blackwood, maintenance supervisor. Same job, same responsibilities, same relationships. Why? Sage smiled with an expression that combined maternal protectiveness with professional lethality. Because Sage Blackwood is the one who learned to love this community. Angel of Death is just the one who keeps it safe. Hayes nodded slowly. I think we can make that work. Dr. Cross closed her notebook with the satisfaction of someone who had just documented a revolutionary development in military psychology. Sage, what you're describing is the successful integration of civilian and military identity into something that's more effective than either alone. Dr. Cross, what I'm describing is coming home. Kane's radio crackled with routine-based communications, but Sage's trained ear picked up something that others missed. A subtle shift in transmission patterns that suggested external monitoring. Kane, has communications noticed any unusual activity in the last 72 hours? Kane checked his tactical display. Actually, yes. Increased electronic surveillance, probe attempts on our networks, and what appears to be reconnaissance of our perimeter. Sage absorbed this information with the calm of someone who had been expecting exactly this development. It's starting. Colonel Hayes looked at the display showing global threat indicators. What's starting? The test, Sage replied. Organizations around the world want to know if Angel of Death is really here, really active, and really committed to defending this location. She moved to the communication array, entering frequencies that would connect her to intelligence networks spanning multiple agencies. They're going to probe, send small teams, limited objectives, designed to test response capabilities without triggering full military retaliation. Kane understood the implications. Ma'am, they're going to try to kidnap base personnel, families, children, support staff. Exactly. Soft targets that would force Angel of Death to reveal operational capabilities while providing them with intelligence about response times, defensive measures, and tactical limitations. Dr. Cross looked up from her reopened notebook. How do you know this? Sage smiled with the confidence of someone who had spent 3 years planning for exactly this scenario. Because it's exactly what I would do if I wanted to test an unknown defensive capability. Colonel Hayes received another communication that confirmed Sage's assessment. Intelligence reports increased surveillance of base housing, the elementary school, and off-base facilities used by military families. Sage looked out at the community she had spent 3 years learning to protect, calculating response strategies and defensive measures with the precision that had made her legendary. Colonel, I need 48 hours to implement enhanced security measures. After that, let them come. What kind of security measures? The kind that will make anyone who threatens this community understand exactly why they call me Angel of Death. Kane looked at this threat display, then at Sage, then back at the display. Ma'am, are you sure about this? We're talking about turning Fort Carson into a target. Sage moved back to the window overlooking base housing, where families continued their normal routines under protection they had trusted for years without knowing how absolute that protection really was. Kane, Fort Carson became a target the moment Angel of Death decided to call it home. The question isn't whether threats will come. The question is whether they'll leave. Her reflection in the command center window showed a woman who had successfully integrated 2 incompatible identities into something that was more than the sum of its parts. Angel of Death, with 47 confirmed kills and operational capabilities that were classified at the highest levels of government. Sage Blackwood, maintenance supervisor, coffee drinker, listener to other people's problems, protector of children, and keeper of community. Both. Neither. Something new. Dr. Cross, you've been studying the psychological implications of my situation for 3 years. What's your professional assessment of the next phase? Dr. Cross considered the question while reviewing notes that documented the most comprehensive study of special operations psychology ever conducted. My assessment is that Angel of Death is about to demonstrate something that military strategists have theorized about but never seen in practice, which is the perfect defensive warrior, someone with maximum capability for violence in service of maximum commitment to protection. Sage looked around the command center at people who had become her colleagues, her mission, her purpose. Then let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget. The morning sun climbed higher over Fort Carson, illuminating a military installation that looked exactly the same as it had 3 days earlier. Same buildings, same routines, same families going about their daily lives. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Angel of Death was home. Angel of Death was visible. And Angel of Death was ready for war. But as she stood in the command center, watching morning routines unfold across the base, Sage realized that the most important battle had already been won. Not against Volkov or his organization, not against the 15 threats now circling Fort Carson like predators testing new territory. The victory had been quieter, more personal. 3 years of learning that deadly precision and protective love weren't contradictory forces. That Angel of Death and Sage Blackwood could coexist in the same person, making each other stronger rather than destroying each other. Outside, children boarded school buses under the watchful eyes of guards who now knew exactly who stood ready to protect them. Families went about their morning routines with confidence born of absolute security. The snake tattoo on her neck caught the morning light, streaming through the command center windows, a visible reminder that legends could choose to serve love instead of only death. Fort Carson had gained more than enhanced security measures and upgraded defensive systems. Fort Carson had gained a guardian angel who had finally learned the difference between fighting for duty and fighting for home.
Behind every uniform is a person trying their best. See each other with respect. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to Teen History.